friends, true believers. So today I'm going to talk about obviously the gods and the spirits, gods versus spirits, right? In terms of the Mississippians. It's not a fight. This is not a versus battle in the true sense of a versus battle. This is an understanding battle, right? Gods, where I say gods versus spirits. I'm just setting up the TikTok stream right now. And this is about understanding the Mississippians, essentially, right? Because that's why we're focusing on it. And I'm going to talk about a couple of cultures, and it should give us some better insight. Okay, so that should get my YouTube streams going and my TikTok streams going. So I think this is some significant information if you want to understand a belief system. Like right now, we want to understand the belief systems of the Mississippian. And earlier in previous episodes, right, I had talked about their creation myth. Obviously, I started at the top. The creation myth to me, obviously, was the center point for starting, because it's the perfect place. This is the beginning of your cycle. This is going to tell us everything about what you believe is going to happen or how you believe it came about. Hang on. I'm sorry, guys. I gotta send this message out. It's better. Okay, so again, I started at the appropriate place, which was their creation myth. After that, I kind of broke down their three realms. Again, their upper realm, which is more the spirit realm. We discussed their lower realm, which is kind of like the water manifestation, central to the creation as well. And then we talked about the middle realm, which is right here, which is us, which is where we reside, is in this middle realm, right? So that was a good conversation on getting like the basics of the Mississippian belief system. So getting like the basics. I definitely feel like it's time and we're ready to talk about, the next level of this. And the next level being, how did they see gods? This is a central part of their worship. So I divided this into this section here, and I'll provide this artwork so that you guys can reference it later. This will be great for you to use later when you have conversations, or you want to just kind of, even check my own work later. This is great because you can see exactly where I'm coming from, right? So I'm not hiding anything, I'm not keeping anything back. So this is kind of shaping it. So you see I've got the Mississippians here in the Americas, starting in the South, obviously Mississippi. We've got the Yoruba belief system. This is West Africa, like Ghana area. The ancient Kemetic, or what you guys would now call Egyptian culture along the Nile Valley River in Africa. And then the ancient Greek system. So these are going to be our fundamental comparisons here, right? So the first thing I'm going to say about the Mississippians is that their culture embraced a spirit world, right? So they didn't necessarily have gods in that sense. And in fact, I'll cut right to the chase. The Greeks were the only one who had gods in this particular fashion, right? They were very different than everyone else. If we go to the Mississippians, it was more of a spirit system. Again, they were attached to water. So they had a lot of water spirits. And you can see these are some important symbols or creators to them that sometimes got translated by God as gods as for people who were outsiders to the culture. But you see the horned serpent, which represents, if you can see that, the horned serpent, that represents, of course, water, underworld, and transformation. You see the Thunderbird, these are the sky powers, right? That's the sky power, that's normal. That's storms, that's protection, that's also war. And then, of course, you have the sun and fire, which is representative of life, renewal, and ceremony. So these systems, in general, were called animistic. So the spirits weren't everything. And this is a powerful, powerful belief system. Because what we're saying is that the spirit's in the river, the spirit is in the bayou or the swamps, the spirit is in the trees, right? This is a very, very different belief system. And I'm contrasting it to the Greeks only because it's significant. Not as any judgment on the Greeks in any kind of way. Obviously, this was a very complex belief system as well. And it's what the Greeks did and studied that formulated the culture that we live in right now here in America. Okay. So I just wanted to show the differences because not all world beliefs are the same. Now, I also showed the Yoruba belief system and the ancient Kemetic. And why I wanted to point these out. So we have the Mississippians who practices spirituality, right? Very definitively spirit. There was ancestor veneration. There were clan connections. They had the three worlds, ceremonial centers. We've seen those, and mound alignments, and ritual specialists who were the intermediaries who talked between regular ass dudes like me and the spirit world, or could talk to the other world. Okay. So then that brings us to the Yoruba belief systems. And this is their worldview. And it's also significant, like massively significant. I'm just going to pull this over here because I want to get a clearer view for myself as I'm reading this off. So their worldview was still a web of like divine beings, the Orishas, right? So the first one we saw the worldview was the universe is alive with spirit forces. The power exists in the natural world. Balance in a relationship with all this is essential per the Mississippians, okay? Now, the worldview of the Orishas, or the Yoruba, I should say, we'll get to the Orishas here in a second, their overall take on this situation was that you have all this divine energy, the Orisha, and they govern aspects of natural and human life. They were not distant, but they were immanent. They were present in the world, okay? And they did have a relationship with humanity. So you could, give them offerings. They were the sea. And this is significant between these two. Now we see their representations. We see like Oshun or Osun, who obviously is their primarily water deity. And she's associated with the rivers, with love, with fertility and beauty. Not so different than what we hear in other river culture systems, right? So the Yoruba and the Mississippians both kind of embrace that. Then you have Shango, who was thunder, justice, and power. He's very similar to the thunder god. So again, water, as we see, she's in rivers. The underworld serpent was in, the primal waters. Then, of course, the thunder, which is justice, protection that comes from the higher realm. And then the last one, in this case, being sun and fire, and this one being the crossroads, communication, and destiny. So those are kind of some similar, at least, ideas in the sense that they didn't have personal relationships with the gods. And I'm going to talk about why that's important and defining. So they saw these Orishas as forces of nature and consciousness. They were ancestors that played an active role in this belief system. They had rituals, offerings, and relationships are central to this. And they were also concerned with balancing, right? With holding that balance, right? I think it's called, I'm not sure. We'll have to check on that. But reciprocation and balance is an important thing for these West African belief systems and their foundation. And they also had intermediaries, so priestess and priests, who facilitated the connection between all of us regular humans and their belief system. So this was about energy, ancestors. It was about personal relationship. It was about reciprocal relationships and ongoing relationships. Harmony, destiny, community, and spiritual growth. And they had various beliefs. Like their intermediaries was very complex. They had, priestess and diviners and all these things. They also built mounds and earthworks and had sacred landscapes and ceremonial grounds. So that was also central to their beliefs. So next, of course, I'm going to talk about the Kemetic, right? One of the most well-known belief systems in the world. And this was a universe that was governed by Ma'at. So cosmic order at the highest level. The Neteru, or the divine forces, the Neters, they embody principles of nature, life, and the cosmos itself. And humanity exists in harmony within this order. So your whole situation is you need to make sure you're in balance with Ma'at. So again, balance was extremely important in these three different cultural systems. Now, the one thing that I always want to point out too is that the Neteru, or the Kemetic belief system, and the Mississippians were predominantly river cultures, right? For the ancient Kemetic people, it was the Nile, and that fed that entire valley. And then when, of course, you go to the Mississippians, it's the Mississippi River that feeds it. So both of these groups saw river as essential to life. So that's a common thread between them, is that they saw the river as being, or the water as being, their ultimate creation, that they were created because of this. And this river sustains their life. So a lot of their cycles of life, agriculture, everyday motions, all that stuff was tied in with the river. And we can see some of their symbolisms, like Atun Ra, who is the sun, who is creation, who is kingship. Aset, among my favorite, who is magic, healing, and motherhood. Anubis, who is transition, protection, and the afterlife. And they had representations like Hathor, who was the sky goddess as well. So she fits in right into that realm with sky, thunder, justice, power as well. So we see them represent that. And then, of course, Anubis, or Anpu, I believe is what the Kemetic people would have called him. Anpu represent that transition. He is protection, and he is the afterlife. And their core principles were all about being in balance with Ma'at. If you're out of balance with Ma'at, bad things are going to happen to you later, right? So we're fully aware of that. You get obliterated. You know, if you're in balance with Ma'at and you die, you go on to, you know, the next stage of it. If you're not, you get eaten by, I think it's Amit, right? Amit is a dude that eats everybody up, you know, in this realm. And, you know, these were very important principles for Yusuf. And obviously they had an extensive system of temples and tombs and pyramids. And the important thing is that when we look at cultures, and that's why I've been talking about the Mississippians, you can also see they have mound structures in the back. Now, with different cultures, you build, especially ancient culture, by what's available for you. And these mounds still exist. The Mississippian mounds still exist to this day. They're thousands of years old. They were more earthen versus the ancient Kemetic people who used limestone. They had massive amounts of limestone. So they used limestone to create those sacred places. But these sacred places, again, were very much in line with the energy. Like, this is the important part, is that they were channeling the same thing. These places were picked because of either alignment star systems. Primarily for the Mississippis, they were measuring like energy currents, wind. Like they really coincided a lot with like kind of some of the natural forces that govern like storms and seasons. And these were sound. Even sound was a part of it, how it channeled sound energy. So both of them were accomplishing all these things with these belief systems, with this idea of building these sacred mounds. So then we come to the Greek, and of course we still see some things that are similar in the Greek. Now this was more of a system of being gods, and so their worldview is more shaped by these anthropomorphic gods who look like us, who live in the heavens, who experience human-like emotions and often and intervene in human events all the time. Like two dudes couldn't even have a fight without somebody getting into it, somebody getting a blow. Oh yeah, I shall bless thou through this fight, or whatever, giving you an enchanted weapon. Or you come home to see your wife and Zeus is walking out of the bedroom laughing. Okay, so they were very different. And but again, you see the sky, the thunder, leadership, you see the wisdom, the war, the strategies in between it, and we see the sea represented by Poseidon. So even within that, they still kind of represent similar ideas or concepts, but that's about as far as where it goes, because the gods in this scenario are far more in control. In fact, the gods get credit for everything, the good and the bad in the Greek system, right? Punishment came from the gods in this way. Creation, again, came from Zeus, protection, all those things. And they had a specific realm, which was the realm of the gods, and you could not go there. I don't think if you died, you didn't go to Olympus. You go to someplace else that wasn't as cool as Olympus. But their myths explain nature and both human events. They obviously took offerings and had temples and festivals, and they were heroes. They acted as, the heroes were the intermediaries, the exceptional people for them. They were their examples, and that's how they worked. So Hercules was their direct link, and Jason and these heroes were their more direct link to the people. So this is all very important, because what you get is a system where, hey, look, Zeus be getting jealous, right? Zeus is petty. It's sometimes, right? Now there's multiple phases of who Zeus was, and each of these phases kind of represent, different aspects of him, obviously. So he wasn't always only just this guy who's going to be looking at your wife with a wink eye, right? He's not always that guy. Zeus represents things in terms of commerce, how you handle strangers and trade. So he had a more primal component of him. So there's a lot of layers within that. But fundamentally, the difference between the gods, as we see them in the representation from the Greeks, and that would kind of, influence a lot of other cultures, the spirit world or the more animistic world, the gods didn't have direct contact like that. You weren't going to run into one of the gods at the store or at your house or anything like that, because they didn't exist. They were more, you had to go to their spaces, to their temples, or use their shrines to communicate with them. That was the system, and it held true in all three of those, right? And I'm only bringing up the Greek because this is probably one of the most well-known of the belief systems, at least worldwide. So understanding how they saw these divine beings is extremely important. And again, we could do the same thing and say with Christianity. Obviously, Christians or the Abrahamic belief systems believed in a God. In fact, they didn't even have a bunch; they had one. And let me tell you, from what I heard about this guy, he also had a run of human emotions. He was a jealous God, right? He was a wrathful God. He was a lot of God. He was loving too. They talk about his loving, right? They do talk about his loving. But goddamn, if he wasn't killing a lot of people along the way too. He was wrathful about that. You didn't play with this guy. Like, I know you're gonna be like, yeah, well, Ra unleashed Sekhmet. Yeah, this is very true. I can't have that fight, and I'm not standing up for that either. So we see some wrath out of those belief systems that I haven't run into anything in the Mississippian cosmology that suggests wrath or ever is a motivation. So that's it. So these cultures were kind of, at their core having some fundamental differences. And I think that's okay. These cultures were spread out, a lot of times separate by thousands of years worth of history. What I think all this means is kind of the psychology of it, right? If I think, and again, this is my beliefs, that, if your culture is more connected to the gods, I don't know. To me, that's a tougher one to scale up to, because you never know what Zeus is going to do, man. Like, I like Zeus too, and I like Athena, and I like a lot of them, but I don't know if I want to be counting on them like that. But the belief systems were all purest for the people. So across this, we see 4 different cultures and how they reflected not only, their gods, those also influence how they saw, the afterlife. What happened when you died, right? Were you still able to be around? As above, so below. With the Greek system, I think if you weren't a hero, so if I'm understanding the Greek system correctly, when you died, you go to like Elysia, right? I think it's Elysia. It's like this golden field where you got reward. The bad people, I think, if you were just cool or not bad, I think you went to Tartarus, right? Am I right on that one? But I think there's a bad place in Tartarus. I think there's a lower level of Tartarus where you don't want to go. They lock you up if you're really bad. And I don't know that the Greeks ever talk about a renewal cycle. I don't know that. From what I understand, and I could be totally wrong on this, but what I understand is I don't think Zeus has ever given up that throne. I mean, in their system, the reset usually came when someone overcame the king, right? Like, was it Kronos overthrew Uranus? Some kind of order. Kronos to Uranus, then Kronos overthrew Uranus, and then then Zeus overthrew Kronos, right? So that was the change, but it didn't necessarily mark a restart in civilization. So I don't anticipate that, at least from what the Greeks, I have not heard of a renewal cycle or an end, right? Like we talk about the Norse system, and Ragnarok obviously was the end there. I don't know that they have an end in this belief system, right? So I don't know that it's there, or at least a renewal cycle. It's eternal. I also don't know that there is one in the Kemetic belief system, even though they were a river system and they were built on this, their culture revolved around renewal cycles, but it seemed like their world view was more of an eternal system. And I'm not sure what the Orishas either, but definitely the worldview of the Mississippians was a renewal cycle, and that you travel through each of these realms, and the goal was that you ultimately renew again. So that's it. Whereas, with the Kemetic belief system, I know that you were allowed to move on, so there was continuity. I don't know if it ever came back all the way back, if it was truly cyclical like that. And again, this is not about judgment of any of these. This is just about understanding. Okay, so we want to understand the belief systems. And I'm using some of this to have my conversations about the Mississippians. It gives me a better understanding of them when I see what other belief systems have done and what that kind of means for these people. So again, I'm kind of living in the area where all this stuff, where these belief systems really prosper. So I want to understand these, and I thought it'd be good for the channel to kind of take on a new belief system that we haven't talked about before. So if you're just jumping into this series, go back. I got at least 2 other full videos where I explain their creation process, and then I go and explain, their death cycle and their 3 realms. So definitely check that out. Drop me any questions or any info that you have in the comment section, because we're taking on a lot. So again, I'm going to load this graphic behind me. I'm going to load this up on the channel. It'll be in the comment area, in the community section, right? So you guys go check it out there. It'll also be up in my social media as well. So if you guys are interested, you can look at these facts. It just gives you like kind of a broad overview, but hopefully this will kind of dig into some deeper conversations, at least for me. So again, thanks for stopping in. I'm gonna lock it up right now. In fact, I'm gonna end the TikTok stream here in just 1 second, because I never really be doing TikTok anyway, but we've got to get that ended. And